And he was bred for extreme agility and extreme strength. So he was made for the front lines of wars and fighting. There was also female super soldiers being bred in that deep underground facility, and that facility was not under the ocean. It was deep underground in Antarctica. There's also facilities in Antarctica under the ice sheets, deep under the ocean as well. And it's protected by electromagnetic shields and field frequencies. So the labs are impenetrable, both the underground ones and the ones that are underwater. So the super soldier who escaped, he couldn't fully get out of the lab. He was recaptured and put back into stasis, in cryogen stasis in the regeneration tank. But while they were searching for him, I basically got a tour of this underground facility because it's a huge facility. So he was being looked for in the tunnel systems because he managed to escape in the underground tunnels. But it's not that easy to leave Antarctica itself. Since it's remote and it's very cold and icy. So basically I got to see these rows and rows of regeneration tanks with these super soldiers who had the greenish gray skin, the claws. They were very tall, both male and female. They had hair. All of them had long hair. So, and I got to see the broken regeneration tank as well, because they called me in to figure out how to reset the security protocols for the lab so nobody could escape from cryogenic stasis anymore and actually get out.
In 2011, Donald Marshall unleashed his first public disclosure on the internet with a letter describing his abuses in a vast underground program of human cloning by parasitic non-human entities in conjunction with the world's shadowy elite. He detailed several types of cloning done at these underground bases. Most notably is REM sleep-driven clones, where as long as they've created a second body for an individual, their consciousness can be transported to these hidden husks at the push of a button. Not only is this the elite's main method of meetups in the modern world, but also the technological solution for their bloodlust into the world,
And it's deep, right? I know. But imagine Hitler managed to damn near take over Europe, right? During World War II. The millions of lives that were lost just all across the board. Is it so? I mean, there's been talk of, we know about Hitler's agenda, right? The Aryan agenda, right? He wrote a whole book on the Aryan agenda. And there's been talk for years in many circles that Hitler was engaged. I mean, we know about the medical experiments that were done on a lot of Jewish people, right? They say that Hitler also had connections, you know, he was into the occult and all this sort of thing. But it has been talked about the Nazis having a base in Antarctica for like decades. And is it, we even did a show one time on red mercury and how red mercury, which is not even really found on this planet, but some managed to get their hands on it. And it is actually suspected that the Nazis ran a lab in Antarctica in which they fiddled with red mercury, which created a gravitational effect, a gravitational field, essentially its own gravitational field, bypassing physics of time. It's crazy. So is it so far-fetched that they would not, I mean, all this cloning's going on. We're talking about horror stories, okay? Dulce, New Mexico, floor number 7, known as Nightmare Hall, where there are half human, half bat organisms. Half monkey, half human. Half pig, half human. Oh, yeah. They're most definitely playing with not only have they figured out the entire human genome, but DNA is what it's been about. It's what it's always been about. That's why you hear about all these damn cow mutilations. You ever really, really looked at a news report on those cow mutilations and how they're bloodless, completely bloodless? The perfect cuts. Listen, this stuff sounds crazy, right? But man, I'm telling you, sometimes the most craziest stuff.
And since Donald's come forward as an Illuminati whistleblower, he hasn't been shy about naming those from the political and entertainment realms that he's encountered
I'd
below.
say it's
Queen
interesting,
Elizabeth, Henry
man.
Kissinger, Hillary Clinton, and Obama, to Bernie Mac, Tila Tequila, Kurt Cobain, and Mila Kunis.
Y'all remember
But as
Tila
odd as this all
Tequila? I ain't
sounds, the
seen her in a
recent trend
minute.
of celebrities actually tweeting about human cloning centers and their own abuses has prompted me to bring him on to get some insights into the latest chapters of this long, dark, far-out saga. Donald, my man, welcome to THC.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah, I'm psyched for this, man. Thanks for doing it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm psyched for this, man. Thanks for doing it. I'm psyched for this, man. Thanks for doing it. But I'm sure this is new to the majority of the people listening. So to get us started, can you elaborate on some of the main aspects of what you've been disclosing since that original letter? Anything I forgot to mention?
Well, your intro really was good. I don't know what to say now. You ruined my entire spiel.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, that Vinny Eastwood interview pretty much detailed most of it well. So I don't want to just do another rehash, right? But let's see the finer points. REM cloning. When you go to sleep, you get zapped. When you enter REM sleep, you get transferred your consciousness into a clone. You don't have dreams anymore. Britney Spears, none of them have dreams anymore. They just have clone time where they walk around and talk a little bit dumber than they normally would be. It's all very clear. It's not like a dream. It's very clear. You slap yourself in the face, you won't wake up though. And I don't know, they just got really more and more depraved over the years. I've been there since I was 5 years old. Was memory repressed until I was about 30. And then I remembered, and it was like Matrix when it floods all back to you.
It's that memory repressed stuff for me, okay? It's like, dude, okay? I have a little problem kind of getting over that part of it. And I can't necessarily say that I would say that I would believe everything that this man is saying. I'm just being honest. But this sure is interesting, though, isn't it? But I hear that the holy grail that every organization, every government, every rich man wants is that ability, that technology that everybody keeps hearing about, where they can transfer the soul from one vessel container to another. Because that would mean what? You could live basically forever, right? Let's get a body transfer every couple of years. Like, this is, hold on. Let me drop a link to this channel real quick. Yeah. I don't know who's, I think Linda Paris is the name of like this, who's doing this interview. What is it? What is this? McAllister.tvonline.com. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm at it from another channel. So, but yeah, but I agree with you, Nakai. I think that whole like 23andMe and Ancestry.com DNA swabs, not only are they a setup, okay, when they're claiming they're going to look for your relatives, and then it's like, oh yeah, send us a swab of your DNA so that we can tell you what, percentage of whatever you have in you. Yeah, okay. Not only are they taking that and they're returning back whatever they're telling you, they're also taking that information and storing that in a database. And all these little police agencies are plugging in. And if you have given your DNA, if you have a family member that commits a crime, they have managed to literally link these DNA profiles from family members and zone in on murder suspects. Matter of fact, that just happened a couple years ago. So we know they may destroy the actual blood, the actual swab, but the output of the DNA strand is most definitely information that's being put into a database. They're not destroying that. They can sit up here and tell you that they're destroying the specimens when they're done with it. But what about the information from that specimen? And do any of y'all ever wonder when you're doing that 23andMe and stuff, you're throwing your spit onto a swab or whatever? Like, we've watched people take skin cells, sperm, pieces of DNA from their body and injected chicken eggs. And homunculuses were born from that. Just go search homunculus and you'll see what I'm talking about. We did shows on that too before. That means that, ever submitted your DNA. And again, there's a huge hybridization program that seems to be ongoing, that is also at the very center of a lot of the agenda of these beings. I guess trying not to let themselves die out because it's so few of them, which makes sense because it ain't like we walk across a gray alien every day. What if they're not from space at all? I don't think that every single one of these weird looking creatures have to necessarily come from space. Maybe they live elusively underground somewhere. But don't believe that 23andMe and ancestry type stuff. I'm telling you, like, they done caught serial killers, okay? And the federal justice system, they feel like they're in the right to use that data, that DNA data. So it's scary.
But
yeah,
so
REM
there's
cloning.
that, REM cloning.
Trying to think of a good other movie. That's why Disney exists. That's why that's there. If you see it and you don't realize it's just the same as the ancient knowledge, the books people have been preaching to you, which the system of the knowledge and the
is saying some stuff, but then you have Nicki Minaj and most recently B.O.B. both tweeting from their own accounts, #StopHumanCloning
things, but might be surprised how many people message you and say they believe you and they know what's going on.
The topic of addictions of the reptilians. Like humans have some addictions like alcohol, drugs, sugar, this kind of stuff. Reptilians have different
are addicted to fear.
Addictions,
Right.
Addiction to torture,
yes.
to this energy. So please explain.
Okay, so putting a human being into a low vibrational state by creating a circumstance in their life that puts them into a depressive state would then give off an energy that they like, because they like the sadness, fear, trauma, and especially tears. So somebody, with their head in their hands crying is the energy is called Loosh, Loosh, and it's very, very high powered energy. So for them, very, very, very. So they would somehow calculate an event, even in dreams. I mean, I've had dreams where I've been crying in a dream, and I know that the 4D it's been mixed and done so that would happen. So they're addicted to doing that. They're also addicted to adrenochrome, which is in the blood. Which, when you bring a human being to the highest state of fear that it can be in, the most extreme state of fear, chemical is run through the body called adrenochrome. And if it's not a nice topic, but if the blood is then, that chemical adrenochrome is inside the blood.
Yes.
So you take that, and if that is consumed, the high from the adrenochrome is the highest high that you can get.
So
that is sold on the black market. It's black. Satanists sell it.
That's why they do those rituals.
Yes, that's one of the reasons. Yeah.
We are basically what I wanted to say before. Apparently, there's the Nazi breakaway society. They come from the Vril-Ya, what they called them in older times. The weird thing is that with all this genetic changes, with all these things, you could say they're different from humans. They're upgraded. What it all comes down to is that this was the Nazis. This was their program running away from themselves. They started an Uberman, a Superman program, which was the eventual goal of all the manipulation projects. Containment and maybe analysis is, you could say, the first of, who's potentially a threat or whatever. The eventual goal was to find the genetics they wanted and create a second race that could win out over all the other humans. And they got what they wanted, but then those genetic mutations that I told you about happened, and there's now another sub race of humanity. It's just always a plan, and there are apparently what you could call elders that have the power and the technology to live essentially a very long time. And the whole thing is mapped out, every little detail, on these huge systems that I don't really even know how to describe, but they use them because now they don't need to get people, they don't need to screen you. They have basically devices and systems set up. For instance, the computer, I'll get to the doctors, but the computer, everything that's on there is being categorized and recorded. So now they don't need to screen whose childhood was one way or the other. They have profiles on everybody that connects to that. Top of that, there's other things that use mind sensing technology, scalar technology, which is a little bit deeper, and it's being propped up now. With the how they get all these people involved, it's both with their consent, without their consent, and with their knowledge and without their knowledge. Anyone that's involved in one of these groups, they can basically be called up, even if it's just like a lower level secret society member, anything like that. They can be called up and brought into an initiation, which will be specifically laden, riddled with programming that will utilize this person essentially as an altar, but it's not through torture. At that point, say he needed to, not like the next client that came in whose name was this. That could be subconsciously put into his programming.
So you can't. Why ritual is so important to them is because whenever you do a ritual, you're then reactivating the morphogenetic field of anybody else who's ever done that ritual before. So if you do a ritual, you're reenacting everybody else who's done it before. Then that you can, if you know what you're doing, you bring them into being. And each one of the 72 is defined as being used for a different thing. Some for money, some for fame, etc. So I don't know the exact details of each one, but I know that they're dukes, princes, kings of quote unquote hell. And then you bring them. The castle in Scotland, which was the Queen Mother's residence, was also called
Holyrood.
No, not Holyrood.
No, I think a friend of mine went to that castle in way back in the 90s, which we talked off camera about, but don't want to mention the name.
That's in Scotland as well, and it's directly connected by tunnels to Boleskine. And Crowley was a royal anyway, really.
Yeah, but what do you mean directly connected by tunnels to?
Most of certainly, I'm sure this goes for France and Germany and Switzerland and all of the external architecture of the castles and main
Yeah,
Gothic
this is something you
cathedrals.
referred to it in Canterbury.
That's one of the main ones, because so many energy grid lines are crossing there. They're connected. If you go underneath them, there's either portals or there's a tunnel system or a magnetic rail system that connects them all up.
They're doing experiments for crossbreeding of human and ET hybrids, as well as genetically modifying humans to create the super soldiers. Often the super soldiers have advanced abilities like becoming invisible, being able to change weather, work with water manipulation, fire, electricity, and they have fast reflexes. Some of them have wings, scales, almost like exosuit armor that protects their skin, and it's natural because they have scales, wings, and hard shell bodies because they're very muscular and tall, and they also have claws. That's what I saw in the beginning when I was looking at these regeneration tanks with these super soldiers inside. And other super soldiers are crossbred with animal genetics and can shapeshift into animals or partial animal human forms. So they can take on the humanoid animal form of lions, cheetahs, and other cat species, or wolves, tigers, or they could like fully shapeshift into those creatures, or they can take partial form of those creatures with humanoid appearances. Many of the super soldier labs and hybrid chamber tanks are in the Antarctica underground laboratories. The regeneration tanks would create the hybridized super soldiers, and they would be held in the tanks until they were ready to be deployed on missions.
They can make normal size clones of you that look almost exactly like you. You'll have different facial wrinkles and stuff around your eyes and stuff. It doesn't look exactly like you. Each one comes out looking slightly different. These duplication clones, it's not like the ones that are grown from babies. You grow full sized. They're all incredibly disgusting there. And they got really confident with how they can do whatever they want to anyone there. And when they victimize or kill someone in real life, it deters anyone from speaking, right? But with me, it's different because I always thought that I was just going to die anyway.
And a lot of the not many of the ones hanged were Mark I clones. Mark II clones are REM-driven clones, meaning REM, rapid eye movement phase of sleep, meaning they take your consciousness while you sleep, and when you enter REM phase in an hour and a half to 2 hours, and they put your consciousness or mind into the clone in the cloning center.
They all they need is a few cells now. At first, what did they say? I think they needed bone marrow and white blood cells, or they needed something more. But now they can take, or I think it's blood. Now they can take any tissue, 2 cells of any tissue, and they agitate it in a certain way, and it literally accelerates the growth until the whole body is there. And there's always genetic flaws to the point where it's not the same. It's not a copy machine. It's basically a copy machine. It's not the same. It grows too fast. So there is always genetic errors, or there are always flaws there. The DNA has telomeres, which as they replicate, the telomeres get shortened. And these are like countdown for, mortality.
And will be
every year. More beaches have to close periodically.
Y'all see how I end up down
to avoid direct contact with the water.
I end up down a rabbit hole with the stuff. I remember these are the photos from Dolce that supposedly show cryogenic tanks of different humanoid-like creatures. I believe Phil Schneider had shot some of this video footage. There's Skinny Bob. There's another being. That's the family reunion. The one that ended with 3 people dead, from my understanding. That's how the story goes anyway. Every time I show anything Skinny Bob, I get weird requests. I've heard some of these beings, they absorb into their flesh to quench their hunger. And I've heard some of these beings have to absorb blood. They put their hands in blood. Some of these beings, I've heard, like these Trantaloids have these pockets of like food that gets produced from their bodies that comes out of their hips. It's very strange. Drew up a treaty with these beings, right? All those years ago. That's what they say. That Eisenhower met for a very, a couple day period, basically. Think about all of the wars that we've had, and how anytime there's these various activities that happen on Earth, there's an increase in UFO activity. I heard the reason for that is because there's more dead bodies, basically. There's more bodies. I heard they used to see them a lot back in World War II. There's a video right now that went viral, I want to say about a week or so ago, from somebody's ring cam that caught this right here in Raytown, Missouri. Okay. Shout out to Casey Mo. Shout out to my sister Zucchini, who lives up there. I hate that city. I try to only go when I have to go. It's cold, it's miserable and shit. It's not really a lot of good food to eat. It's some good food to eat, but this craft literally hovered down Raytown, Missouri. It's down 63rd Street, y'all. Casey Mo. Just a few weeks ago. Caught on somebody. It was actually caught on 2 ring cameras. 2 ring cameras. Stunning. I know that this was one of the shots, and then they caught more footage from a house a couple houses down, and so they had the craft from literally 2 cameras, 2 angles, 2 cameras. This is the second angle. This was somebody. This was a house a couple houses down, like a half a block down, but there's clearly a craft flying, okay, that does not look normal at all. That was caught on ring cams. And this did go viral, so incredible. I even the night that this went viral, I think Third Phase of Moon even did a live stream about it. That is Look how the cars just, it's like they don't even care. It's like they don't even care that we see them. It's like we know they're there, what you gonna do about it type thing. I mean, when they flew over Washington, D.C. en masse, the way they did, what was it, back in the 60s or 70s when it happened? But then that tetrahedron shaped object showed up over the Pentagon back in 2013. And it was like a mile wide. And it hovered over the Pentagon 2 hours. 9 years before. I believe Barack Obama he gave a speech that day, and there was a very weird anomaly that happened in the sky, almost like a spiral type of like wave that you could see in the sky. I don't even know if was even like diagnosed or whatever, but that day, that morning, in the early morning hours, we're talking 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, a black pyramid shaped, tetrahedron shaped object literally floated and hovered over the Kremlin for the better part of about 3.5, 4 hours. And it's amazing. And I still don't think it gets enough video or press coverage. I mean, not to mention, this is all stuff that's happened in our lifetime. But what about that whole like very strange incident that happened in Jerusalem back in 2011? Captured on 4 or 5 different cameras all over the city. And something literally came down. It hovered for about 15, 20 minutes over the Dome of the Rock, most sacred place in the world. Very strange stuff. And it literally went all the way down, flashed very, very brightly, and then shot up. I actually did a video on it because it's crazy how a lot of this footage just kind of disappears as the years go on. But there was 4 cameras actually. Somebody had actually even put the timing up. But I just happen to think it's a pretty amazing event, and it did make the news. Yeah, hold that thought. Yeah. It's just amazing. And it literally came all the way down, flashed brightly, and then shot up very quickly. Right over the Dome of the Rock. That's still...
There's a new video this morning that some say may be proof we're not alone in the universe. A UFO in the form of a bright light is seen descending over the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The video is said to be taken over the weekend. Then suddenly the light shoots up into the sky. There you see it. Another video from a different angle appears to show the light doing the same thing. Those clips have gone viral now.
That thing hovered like a good 15 seconds, and it was so bright you couldn't see what was inside of that light. It's just too bright, brighter than the sun, man. But that's still a mystery. So it's been a lot of very interesting things that have happened over the years. But anyway, I'm about to get up out of here. Work week, okay? As you, make your way into Monday. I want to give a special shout out to Fancy Rose. And before we get up out of here, shout out to the Leak U community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
Nation is most often associated with the wisdom of the East. It was in 320.
All right, y'all. I'm out of here. I'll catch y'all next time.
Earth embodied in the body of a newborn baby, human or otherwise. Instead of spending eternity in paradise or torment, we experience cycles of life and death here on Earth. The concept of reincarnation is most often associated with the wisdom of the East. It was in 323 AD at the Council of Nicaea that the concept of reincarnation was tossed out of Christian theology. The purpose of the Council of Nicaea was for early Christians to settle their disputes regarding Christ. These disputes range from who was Christ? Was he man or divine? What was his relationship to the one true God? Included in these arguments was the concept of life after death. Obviously, by the end of the council's meeting, the belief in reincarnation was out. Along with it was a group of early Christians who are now considered heretics, called the Gnostics. These early Christian texts include the Secret Book of John and the Myth of Sophia. In the Secret Book of John, the concept of a soul re-entering the body is clearly described. The Myth of Sophia takes this concept even further, where it describes the consequences one can expect after death and during their next lifetime.
That other set of coils that they would start doing high-speed performance. Powering up the coils took a little while, just like turning on an electromagnet. It was common for it to take as long as 10 seconds for the coils to power up. Because the particles that are running through the fiber optics are subatomic particles that do decay, the coils would heat up if you ran at full power for too long. And the tall whites were always very conscious of the temperature of the coils. And therefore, it was very common to see them when they sat down on the desert, on occasion, especially on hot days, to get out and open up the panels on the outside of the deep space, on the outside of the scout craft, obviously just letting the coils cool off. It doesn't mean the coils were necessarily too hot, but they liked the coils running cold, and they're always very conscious of the coil temperature. On that day, that scout craft suffered a meltdown of the fiber optics. Now that, as I remember, was a Wednesday, and they worked on that craft from...
Y'all, fiber optics in 1969, I just am still quite amazed by that. Internet didn't even exist in 1969. We were still on telephone. If you lived in small towns, you could literally dial somebody's number by just dialing 4 digits. Only as people expanded and more homes needed phone numbers did you have to extend out to 7 digits, then 10 digits. And it's just going to get bigger and bigger the more area codes you need, right? When I was younger here in Dallas, even in my early 20s, 214 was our main area code. Now we got 469, 940, 214. Like, I could go on and on and on. It's that many people, that many phone numbers that have been recycled. But 1969. So if you ever wonder to yourself about the explosion of technology, really since Roswell, the explosion of the internet, the way that speed has become so much faster, And I think about that because my first machine was a freaking Packard Bell, okay? My first computer. I had a 14.4 baud modem. You were doing good to get 28. And then 56K modems came out, okay? And many of us went and replaced our old 14.4 baud modems for the 56K. And that was pretty much the traditional standard. I mean, you couldn't even put a lot of images on a web page because it would take forever and a day to load. Because that was the speed. Y'all remember the dear AOL? It was dial up. But for fiber optics to have actually even existed already, that's nuts. That's nuts.
Wednesday, 24 hours a day till the following Monday morning, just getting enough coils repaired so that they could lift off and take it back to the base. And in order to take it back to the base, they had to bring out 2 extra scout craft. In the meantime, they brought out several others with mechanics and stuff. And they had to nurse it back to base by running 2 extra scout craft on each side, just to get it back to base where they could fiddle with the coils. Recovering from a coil meltdown was obviously a big problem for them.
All right, guys, listen, it's ad time. It's ad time. Give me just a moment. If you don't mind, I would like to premiere my little quick BIGO ad that I created in 10 seconds or some shit like that. It didn't take me long. But give me just a moment because I'm really trying to grow my BIGO. And man, out in the live, and there's like 1,000 people that watched. And I'm just like, what's going on here? What in the world is going on here? And every single time, usually it's at least 400 or 500 every single time. And so anyway, I won't give out my formula or anything like that. But yeah, it's been really, really cool. And so I'm really working hard, to get my BIGO thing going on. So anyway, let me do that really quickly. All right. I mean, it's obviously very short, okay? I put just a little bit of effort into it, but enough. But I will make a much better ad. But please follow me on BIGO. I've got the ad in the description. I also put the link in the description. I also put the link in the live chat. So listen, let's play the rest of this. Let's finish watching this amazing documentary. Yeah, we'll go from there. And shout out to those of you on all platforms, including BIGO, baby, my new love.
Miles an hour, they'd be traveling like a baby buggy. And they wouldn't, but it wasn't until they'd powered up that other set of coils that they would start doing maintenance. Powering up the coils took a little while, just like turning on an electromagnet. It was common for it to take as long as 10 seconds for the coils to power up. Because the particles that are running through the fiber optics are subatomic particles, the tall whites were always very conscious of the temperature of the
Guys, I'm back.
Set down on the desert.
Hold on
occasion, especially on hot days, to get out.
So, well, I want my people to hear this.
Hold
on.
Outside.
So, well, I want my people